Hello, and you're very welcome to a weekly Irish League podcast called Kicking Match. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and we've just wrapped up a double game week, both in podcasts and in the league. Lots more games means twice as many plot points for us to waddle our way through, and I think we can officially say the Glens from the start of the season are back. The problem for Blues fans might be, looked as though the form of early season Linfield has returned as well. This week, we get a little bit overexcited about Lauren's title credentials, so you don't have to, and Mel Curry earns the biggest win of his Portadown managerial careers. Is this the start of a miraculous recovery, or a Mid-Ulster false dawn? I have a Glenavon fan with me to figure it all out. Don't ever say I don't do nothing for you. 2 podcasts I gave you this week, all for the price of, well, nothing. You are indeed locked in right now to your regularly scheduled, ready salted, all talking about the Irish League episode, but I recorded something extra. I fired it out at the start of the week. It was a rather brilliant, I must say, conversation with a man called Kieran Burke. He's a journalist, he's a podcaster, he knows it all about the League of Ireland. He's from the Between the Stripes League of Ireland podcast. I had a wee call with him. I just wanted to ask a load of questions about the League of Ireland, which I think a lot of us here who follow the Irish League want to know. It kicked off there over the weekend, so I wanted to find out, like, who are the favourites, what's the score with being professional, is most of the teams professional there, and what's the score with this whole Tinder for footballers, because I feel like that's something that's probably going to come our way. So yeah, we talked finances and all those kind of fun things, transfers, so go check that out once you've had your fill, of course, of some Irish League recapping, because I know you want me to chat about the league that you'll happily go and see on the coldest and wettest of nights. And I know that I also have a massive reputation for being a huge scud, particularly when it comes to booking guests, and I feel like this week I have completely outdone myself. This really does take the biscuit. He's a journalist, he's a part of the Glenavon media team, which includes the rather excellent Mournview Monthly podcast. You'll most likely recognise him for being the voice asking Gary Hamilton all the questions after the games, and the way their season's been going, that's not always an easy task. Yes, I have already made all the jokes about how his name sounds like your man from The Office the last time he is on. It's a massive welcome back to Michael Scott. Dare I ask you how your week's been going?
I am better. I leave my house and get abused by my neighbours. I leave my kid to school and get abused by his school friends. It's been terrible. It's been terrible. That's what happens if you live in Tandragee, Portadown stronghold. But anyway, yeah, great.
Bold move, sir. But you've had it pretty good over the past, I would even call it months, years, close to a decade. You've had the runaround of your neighbours in Mid-Ulster.
We have, but I think what's particularly galling is that we have lost to what is arguably the worst Portadown team to play in the Premier League. Look at their points tally. For me, it's a low. It's a deep low, and it hurts a lot.
Well, we're here to go through all the action from the weekend.
I can't wait.
We will start at the top with the Mid-Ulster Derby. It took place at 5:30. I put a poll out there and I said, what was the biggest result from the weekend, from Larne moving to top 3 points clear? Was it Crusaders maybe sticking around in the title race? But winning out was Portadown, their biggest win of the season, taking home 3 points, a vital 3 points in a 3-1 win against Glenavon. I had the opportunity to go down to this game, and I must say I thought Portadown were fantastic, the best I've seen them in years. The other side of the coin of that is the fact that Glenavon were very poor. I will throw it over to yourself because I felt as though you were about to get going. Your manager, Gary Hamilton, says he was absolutely disgusted. Said there was only 2 players that could hold their head up high. That was the goalkeeper and young 19-year-old Jamie Dornan, who was actually very good. I thought he was brilliant as well on Saturday. You're calling this a low?
Yeah, I have to agree with Gary as well. There were only 2 players that came out of that with any credit. Oh, sorry, 3. Jordan Stewart as well, thought was quite good. But other than that, there was nothing. Defensively, we were in absolute shambles. Up front, we offered nothing. We weren't really helped either by the fact that Peter Campbell withdrew before the game, but whether or not he'd have lasted 90 minutes anyway, midfield generally was bypassed. It was absolutely stinking. I looked back earlier on at the 3 goals before I came on, so to remind myself of just how bad it was. And, it's just the calamity of errors throughout. The first goal, Aaron Prendergast gets turned. Fair enough, he's not a defender, but it's really, really poor. We don't clear the ball. Portadown take the lead. The second goal, Wardy, I think it was Sean Ward.
It comes from a corner.
Yeah, Wardy gets pushed off the ball. Madness. And then the third goal, we throw the ball straight to the Portadown player. It's knocked forward, and the score. It's mad. It's just absolutely shocking. I think there's been a lot of criticism for Gary over the last few weeks. And some of it's justified, some it's not so justified in my view. But the players have to take a lot of responsibility. How can you go from playing Crusaders on Tuesday night, putting in a very decent performance, almost beating them, conceding a draw to a late goal, and then coming to Portadown with the exact same team near enough and putting in the absolute dross that we did? It's a complete mentality thing. I don't understand it.
But is that not the story of your season? Because from where I've been sitting in this chair talking about Glenavon's results, on a surface level, it's been this, running remark that you just don't know what Glenavon team's going to turn up. And every time you think that they're going to get roasted by a top 6 team, they come out with a great result. And every time it looks as though they're going to go on a great run and toast the bottom 6 side, they lose in either a weird or strange or disappointing fashion. As you said, oftentimes it's the same players on the pitch.
You look at our form against the bottom 6. I think we've only won 3 out of 14 against the bottom 6 this year. I think that's the stat Gary told me the other day. We've been knocked out of 3 cups by lower league sides. It has to be a mentality thing, because the same team and the same tactics work against top 6 sides. So what I'm led to believe that basically come those games where there's an expectation that they should win, i.e. games against the bottom 6, they just completely melt. And I can't understand it. They're seasoned pros, most of the players in that team. Yes, there's a fair bit of youth in that team, but they are experienced players who should be able to deal with that. It's completely baffling.
It's strange because you have such experience in that team and experience of winning really high end in the league, and they have turned up and they have been able to drag these younger players up to a higher level in the bigger games. And you'd think the one thing that they wouldn't have an issue with is going up the gears and taking care of business against opposition where they feel as though they should go out and win. Against a Derby opponent, the win's up. Both teams, they can be complete wild cards, and this game really felt like it. Portadown go to an early lead. There's a big crowd in both ends, and that first half, Gary was talking about it in the interview with yourself, that Portadown go in only 1-0 in. They could have scored a number of times. Conor Friel misses a penalty. And usually what Glenavon would do in that scenario is that after being under the cosh, they would come back and they would get the result. And even with 10 minutes to go, it was 2-1. And it felt as though this is when Glenavon get out ball over and take care of this Portadown team who had their chances to win it and then potentially all but relegate them. That wasn't the situation. 3-1 for Portadown. Right now, there is a bit of a limbo in the league forming. We have our top 6 nailed in already with about, whatever it is, 5 or so games to go, 4 games to go. That's already locked in. Is it a case of it's hard to try and figure out what we're fighting for? Is there a motivation thing where it's like, well, we're pretty much going to be fine, and you get caught out by a team? Like, are teams doing to you what you're doing to the bigger teams in a way?
At the minute, the best we can hope for is 7th place. Whether we like it or not, that's the position we're in. We now, I was actually looking at our fixtures earlier on, with the exception of 2 games between now and the end of the season, they're all against bottom 6 sides. We play Glentoran twice. We play Newry on Saturday, then Glentoran, then we play Newry, then Glentoran. So once we get those 2 Glentoran games out of the road, it's bottom 6 sides the whole way. And we're still only 3 points off 7th place. So there's something to play for. We have to win those games. Simply have to go out and win all of those games, as far as I'm concerned, to put any sort of a shine in this season. So there's something to play for us. There's something to play for Ballymena. There's something to play for even Carrick Rangers. You're still in a shout of making that playoff spot. So, it's still very interesting in and around there. The players have to show up and be counted.
This feels like this is going to be one of the biggest summers in recent history for Glenavon. And actually, I would put Ballymena in this little area as well. They've got different issues in regards to reportedly cutting their cloth and how they rebuild their team. But you look at the Glenavon team, they've talked about how they found it difficult to bring players in. It's a team that's had a real strong spine for a couple of years, and now I wonder, will Gary look to freshen things up? The question is, how will he do it? And will it be a case of, has this recent spell and has much of the season taught Gary and the higher ups of Glenavon that perhaps they're going to have to gamble on more sure targets? Or is it a case of, at the level Glenavon are, the area that they're shopping for players, it's going to be a bit of a win or bust mentality when it comes to bringing new players in?
That's a good question, because you look at the transfer market. I mean, even Ballymena, in January, weren't able to bring in one player, and that was he from Newington? I think it was in the end.
Yes.
And we brought in two players. One of them was from Anna, and the other one was obviously Jordan Stewart, unknown from Linfield, which we got very lucky with, I think. It's a very difficult market out there for us, and people need to understand that with the full-time market or full-time situation as it is in the league, anybody who's decent is going to be gobbled up by those players. Or if they're from the Belfast area, they might get a chance of playing part-time with Cliftonville, who by the sounds of it are playing very decent wages, and you don't have to travel very far if you're living in Belfast. If you're Ballymena or Glenavon, obviously opposite ends of the country, but sort of similar distance away from Belfast, you may as well say, it's very difficult to attract those players down. So you're going to have to either, as you say, gamble and lure them in with big money, break their, because I don't think our top earners almost more than 350 from what I'm led to believe a week. You're going to have to either break your pay barrier, or you're going to have to stick with what you have and try and build something with younger players. It's a tricky one to call. Lessons have to be learned as well. We've heard these stories coming from Ballymena about cutting their cloth and the situation they're in. Not that I'm saying they're in deep financial situation or bother or anything like that there, but you don't want to go overspend, end up in a situation where your club is fighting for its own survival, never mind fighting against survival against relegation. Let's be brutally honest.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough one to call. I'm glad I'm not the one that's making the call. But I have every faith that Gary will get it right whenever it comes to the transfers in the summer.
Because there's lessons to be learned here from the team that won out on Saturday. A team in Portadown who I think have already learnt the lessons from what they would probably describe as their own mistakes last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about a lot in this podcast how they had this transfer policy. It was a high turnaround. They brought in players almost exclusively with no experience of the league, hoping, gambling that they were going to come in, they were going to be bargains, or they were going to have the talent and skill to get the results that they wanted to. We all know what happened there. Absolute disaster. One of the worst runs of a team has ever had in this league. Now Curry is brought in, and he then has to do his own tinkering, completely tearing up the squad. He's brought in a lot of players with the complete opposite mentality he's had, bringing in players with a lot of Irish League experience. So far, there has been some bright sparks of success. Obviously, when you look at 3-1 at home against your rivals, the fans are loving it. It feels like it's dreamland, but they are definitely going to be a study, no matter what happens to them this season, that when you take a gamble, you are taking a gamble. Sometimes you have to go for what's tried and tested, and a good example of that is actually probably Carrick, who they are looking home and hosed right now and safe. Their policy seemed to be Curtis Allen, bringing in Cushley a few years ago. They've got very experienced back line. They went for nailed on experience, and that's really, really benefited them. And in fact, it's a policy which Glenavon have went for over the past few years as well. You've brought Owen Bradley back this summer. Ward's been a real mainstay at the back for a number of years now. I know hockey's out, but he's of that same ilk. So it's a new era.
If you go right back to the start of Gary's time, I mean, one of the first signs he made was Mickey Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
You think about it, as tried and tested as probably the route Gary will go down, because that's what Gary does, and he's able to attract those players to the football club. It's where you find them is the issue for Glenavon at the minute, I think, and for every Irish league club. I would say Ballymena will be in the exact same position. Carrick too. That's the problem we find ourselves in. We just don't know where to find. Although I suppose the summer gives you a bigger window of opportunity. You'll have players coming out of contract. You'll have players wanting to move on from their current clubs more so than what they will be in January. So I suppose that's why January is a much more difficult window for us than what the summer will be.
I think it's fair to reflect that there has been pressure on Gary this season. I've seen it online. Some people feeling as though this season has been one of regression and stagnation. Obviously you're part of the club there. You've seen some remarks. I think it's fair to say that the job Gary's done over the past 10 years has been incredible. This is clearly not one of his top tier seasons, but what he's been able to build at the club cannot be forgotten about. And in this new era, you're not always going to continually progress. Sometimes you have to take a step back to take a few steps forward. I think he has earned that. I'm sure for yourselves it feels as though the summer can't come soon enough, because it's been difficulty. The attendances are slightly down, and something I wanted to say to yourself, because I thought it was brilliant and such a unique thing for club media to do, was your interview with your chairman, Adrian Tier. I talked about it in the podcast at the time. It was fascinating to do, I'm sure, from your point of view as well, because you put to him a lot of tough questions. You put to him a lot of questions about topics that we're talking about right here when it regards to finances, when it comes to recruitment. Even at that level, do you think there's a bit of a crossroads now for the club?
Yeah, I do. I think all aspects of the club need to be looked at. We do need to look at ourselves and ask, right, what are we doing here? Where are we going? How do we go forward? Before we go any further back. Because yes, you're right. This is probably the worst season in Gary's 11 years at the club. There are changes that need to be made all over the place, not just board level, not just that. We all need to reflect, and it's going to be a big summer in that regard. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. It was a really interesting interview to do though with Adrian. Fair play to him. He phoned me and he said, "Look, I think we should do this." It was actually his idea to go ahead and do it, and I said, "Okay, well I'll do it, but you have to let me ask what I want." And he said, "That's okay." But which was great. I sometimes get really frustrated. I think I said this the last time I was on. I get really frustrated sometimes where I'm doing post-match interviews and I have to do it in the style of a club representative instead of the journalist in me. Like, I'm down to ask the question, Gary, do you think your time is coming to an end? I'm not going to do it though whenever I'm doing club YouTube, because that's just man. You wouldn't never Man United were having a spot of bother at the end of last season, whatever it was, and Mourinho was in charge. You didn't see MUTV turn around and saying, "Right, Jose, do you reckon it's time to go?" Why would I do that? So it was a unique situation for me to go in and say, "Right, let's go and do this properly. Let's sit down. Let's ask the questions that I think the supporters want to get the answers to." And fair play to Adrian, he answered them all, and I thought he was very honest in what he said. And I think it was actually an insight that not just for Glenavon fans, but for other clubs that are around the league, where we are in terms of the setup in the league at the minute. Because obviously you've got full-time teams who are running away with it, and then you've got teams at the bottom who are struggling, and then you have us in the middle who are like, where do we go? We need investment. We need something to happen, or else the backside's going to fall out of this here, and we don't need investment. We just have to sit and be patient. And I think that's basically the view that Glenavon are taking at the minute. Would love some investment, don't get me wrong, but some of the wages are being paid at the minute, from what I'm led to believe, by teams who are sort of in that mid-table ranking, even teams down at the bottom end as well. It can't be sustained. If something's going to, I reckon there's a balloon that's going to burst at some stage, and hopefully the Glenavon board have called it right, and we are going to be okay whenever that happens.
Your own chairman reflected that. He said that he believes that was the case, as some clubs were overextending themselves. And what I find interesting right now, when I try to think about what the situation is in the league, and if I was in charge of one of these clubs, gamble sounds tough, because no matter what wages you pay out, it's a gamble. But if you set your wage at a certain point and you get relegated, it's it's not going to help, is it?
There's a story at the minute that's doing the rounds about one of the clubs. I'm not going to name names because I don't think that's fair, because we don't know whether it's true or not for a start. But
Yep.
there's a story going around about one of the teams who are reportedly paying a player £650 a week, and that at the end of the season, should his side be relegated, he can walk away from that contract for free. The flip side of that is, what if he's still on £650 a week and decides not to walk away, and that team's in the championship? How do they afford to pay those wages? That's how we end up in a situation we're talking about, where teams are overextending themselves. It's a worrying time for clubs like Glenavon, Ballymena, but I want the bottom six, to be quite honest. How you try to compete against those top six sides or those full time teams and not endanger the future of your football club. It's a I don't envy chairman and treasurers at football clubs. You have to try and figure that one out.
It's how many tickets you buy for the raffle, isn't it? It's how many you go for, and
You'd need to buy a hell of a lot of raffle tickets to pay that a week, wouldn't you?
well. I think I should reflect on what is the biggest win of a team who's had a toured season, a potentially historically per season. Portland run out 3-1 winners in a game which I described last week as absolutely must win for them. If they lost, mathematically they wouldn't have been down, but when you look at them having only a certain amount of games left, it looked as though it was all but over. So they keep it going. Portadown are on 9 points. I'm sure many fans would really like that to be 12, but it is what it is. And now they go into a run of games after yourselves. They've got Dungannon on Friday, which is absolutely massive. Then they've got Carrick and Newry as well. If they can get results against them, because they're 11 points behind Dungannon and Newry. You take those games there, they're going to be in clawing distance just as you approach the split. They've got a lot to do, but I'm sure after that game, they will be dreaming of what can be achieved. From an outsider's point of view, taking away the fact that they're your rivals and they've been melting you all weekend, you have to look at a team that was sitting on 6 points last week, double digits points away. Goal difference is awful. They've barely been able to win really any games all season. If Portadown were somehow able to not only not finish 12th, but survive, it's surely the greatest escape in Irish League history.
It would be, but there's a long way to go before we get there.
Oh, unbelievable. The road to El Dorado is in front of them.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves because Portadown have won a match. Let's be,
Yes, but
a very poor Glenavon team. But no, look, it's doable for them. They're in exactly the same situation Glenavon are in. A lot of their games between now and the end of the season are against bottom six sides. So there's absolutely no reason. If Portadown put in the same level of performance that they did against ourselves, yeah, they could do it.
That's the thing about when you're playing in the split, as much as, yes, you've got to play against teams where you can impact it. It works both ways, where if you don't get a result, it's being flipped back at you. It's 6-pointers everywhere, and it just feels weird to even be talking about the potential crazy run they could go on if that was to be the case. I think it would be unbelievable, and I really cannot see it happening. But in what has been one of the most fascinating and entertaining seasons we have ever seen, particularly in this 12-team run we've had over the past 15 years, whoever wins this title is going to be a massive story. Looking at what's been a bit of dull and dreariness of a season of really 2.5 years for Portadown. If somehow they're playing top flight football next season, the run they will have to go on it'll probably feel like a cup run for them, won't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm looking at the table here now because it's sort of forgotten what way it was, but they're still 11 points behind Dungannon. They have a game in hand. As you say, they have to play Dungannon twice. They'll have to play Newry, I think, as well, twice, and Carrick.
Newry twice and Carrick twice as
So, I
well.
mean,
So
it's doable.
technically in their hands.
It's yeah, technically still in their hands. It's a big ask, but they're going the right way. As you say, they have shown signs of improvements in the recent weeks. The new signings from January seem to be settling in. Now seems to have an idea of what he wants to do at the side and what way he wants them playing, and they seem to be responding to that. McElroy seems to be a very big player for them at the minute. He looked good on Saturday, but it's a massive ask for them. If they can make the playoffs, they'll have done well.
Oh, massively, massively if they could get into the playoffs. But we'll see. It just feels so rare to even talk about Portadown getting points, and we don't know. I might not be able to talk about them as much next season. But we go to a massive game as well. Larne are sitting top of the league. They had the gauntlet thrown down to them. Prove to us that you have the title credentials that the position you're in suggests you have. Cliftonville come into your house on a Saturday. Are you able to stand up, dispatch them, and make a bit of a gap between them and yourselves? And they did it. They're top by 3 points. They've got a game in hand over Cliftonville and Linfield. Cliftonville and many other teams aren't out of it yet. Right now, with 10 games to go, I don't want to overhype it, don't want to scud them. The baton is in Larne's hands, and they have never been in this position ever before.
Well, this is it. It's all about now how they manage the situation. Like, you have to say they're in the driving seat. They look very good from what I saw of them against Cliftonville. They've looked very good actually anytime I've seen them this year. They've done a fantastic job this season. Who would bet against them? Who would bet against them? I suppose the only thing, Linfield still are in a shout. They know how to win that league. Cliftonville have won it before. Again, that winner's mentality that we talked about earlier. I don't think. Well, I think that the Crusaders are probably too far out of it now. I think it's down to those three to see who might, take the title. But if I was putting my money on it, I would probably throw a few pound on Larne at this stage.
I am absolutely not a betting man, but even if I was, I do not think I could call it at this point because Larne haven't been here. This is a team that has had a lot of refreshment this season. They've blended well, but they've had their nil-nils against Newry. They've had their bumps along the way. They've gotten out of situations by the skin of their teeth. We all know what happened at Morinview near the start of the season, but credit goes to them. That was a big game. We've seen a lot of draws when the top 6 teams face against each other. The high pressure situations often leads to deadlock. It wasn't the case. It took a real moment of magic from Leroy Miller to take the ball, look up, and just ping that ball right out of reach of Gart's side for Cliftonville to take the lead. From there, they kept the pressure on. Cliftonville, McDonough gets sent off for a second yellow card and a dive. That is incredibly frustrating when you're in the position that you're in. But whoever wins this league, and I think there's 5 realistically, I think, that could do it right now. Whoever wins it, it is going to be one of the stories of the decade in this league. Because either it's going to be an historic first title for Larne, finally getting under the top of the mountain after all the development and all the investment they've had. Could it be Cliftonville, who are exercising the ghosts of last season on the run they've gone to finally get the title, being a part-time team? If Linfield were to win it, it would be a brilliant run. A run where they take care of business against the bottom teams. They don't do it against the top teams for most of the season, but they hang in there. And the results Linfield will have to get them there would be iconic for their fans in recent history. And then you have Crusaders standing tall, brilliantly at home. A few mistakes there, but a similar big results against big teams if the title was going to go to them. And then you have Glentoran. Yin and Yang personified. One of the most exciting, one of the most stridently powerful, dominating runs I've seen at the start of the season. They wouldn't let a goal go past them. They were scoring for fun. Then it all falls apart in dramatic way, one of the most dramatic ways we've seen. And then Rodney Macquarie comes in. And if he was to win it, they would be coming from behind. And the run they would be going on would be akin to the run they had at the start of the season. It would be an unbelievable story. But for Larne, they have to stand tall and do what they haven't always been able to do and fend off the teams around them. I can't call it.
It's going to be a fascinating sort of the split games are going to be absolutely fascinating. I think the change they've made to move the game between first and second to the second last game is absolutely fascinating. I think I can't wait for that. it's gonna it's I really hope somebody decides to show some of these last games on TV because I want to see them. We could end up playing somebody like they ourselves, but I would love to see that last game to see where it goes. It's going to be a really fantastic climax of the year. I can't wait for it.
Cannot agree with you more. I talked about it last week. I think the changing up the split is completely the right move, and it feels like right now we're all biding our time. It's like it's points builder right now to a little mini run-off playoff when all these teams face off against each other for the final 5 games.
It reminds me of that fateful day at Moorview Park where Glenavon nearly won the league and Portadown nearly won the league, but Linfield won the league.
That would be some. That was a long time ago, but that would be
95, I think
that
that
would be
was.
that would be some going. Was it both teams? Was it Glenavon against Portadown, and both teams could have won it? You just drew, and that meant Linfield won the
Yeah.
league. There'll be something like
Glenavon,
that, no matter what.
I think Glenavon and Portadown finished 2 each, and Linfield beat Glentoran that day and basically snuck the league. That's basically what it was. Yeah. If Glenavon or Portadown had won the game, either one of the two, whoever had won would have won the league.
Well, another game which could play a big role if they can keep a run going. This felt like a game between two teams whose hopes were on the line when it came to just sticking around in the title race. Crusaders hosted Coleraine, and disappointing for Coleraine, they just didn't turn up. They needed to come in and do something that really no one's been able to do, bar maybe Ballymena and somebody else, and that was win at Seaview. But Crusaders are formidable at home. It's one of those cliches of this season. They use that tight pitch really, really well. Heatley is still as electric as he's always been. And as much as they are, whatever it is, 8 points away from Larne, and Larne have a game in hand, Crusaders aren't scared of anybody at home. And if they can sort out their away form, they will be in the mix, because I look at that team and I think 1-11 they're strong, and with Stephen Baxter, he's been there, he's done that, and they're arguably the best coach team in the league.
Absolutely. And even it was frightening for me on last Tuesday whenever we played them. Their bench, the Crusaders are a good side. It's a fool to discount them, but they're certainly going to have a role in deciding who's going to win this title. Same with Korean. They've still got a key role to play. They still have a chance of playing in Europe as well. That'll be in their minds too. They'll want to finish as high up the table as possible, try and give themselves that home advantage in the playoffs. So two very good sides, two very well coached sides, and two teams that no doubt will be having a big say as the season continues.
They absolutely will. A tough, disappointing loss for Coleraine. They themselves are 8 points. Crusaders are only 6 points away. So Coleraine are far behind. But like we said, points being taken off other teams. Coleraine were on a brilliant run, really, since the new year, not conceding goals. Even before the new year, Shevlin, for me, is the best striker in the league, pinging them in. Hopefully this will just be a blip in their eyes and they can power on and get a few more results. Glentoran, like I said, are going on an amazing run right now. They went into Ballymena, they go a goal down, but they showed their class, showed their quality. 3-1 winners, and a collection of pretty tasty goals there as well.
Glentoran, they've really turned the corner over the last few weeks with McManaman coming back into the side, and obviously the change in management. As we said earlier on, it'll be a big ask for them to get back into the title race, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I just didn't realise that they had still had 2 games in hand over Larne, however that's happened. So, they win those 2 games in hand. They're still taking them up to 57 points and 5 behind Larne, if my maths is right. So Glentoran, their goal difference is plus 34. Ballymena, who are seventh place, they're 21 or 20 points behind them in the league, goal difference of minus 11. Glentoran's goal difference is plus 34. So that's the difference between the top 6 and the bottom 6 at the minute.
There's a small little grey line between them, but there is a gulf in results. And I talked last week about how people needed to stop Leroy Miller coming in from deep, getting into that corridor of uncertainty, we call it, in between the defenders. We've seen it over the past few weeks. We've seen it over months and maybe years. Teams, you need to stop Conor McMenamin coming onto his left foot and crossing it in. I keep seeing him score goals. My favourite goal from that game on Friday night, he whips it in, it's headed in at the far post, back in for Rory Donnelly to knock it in. They have quality and they are dangerous, and it's going to be up to these teams at the top to try and withstand the pressure they'll be facing. Glentoran are a confidence team, and right now they are brimming with it. Of course, a team you can't count out of this title race, a team which I feel like a lot of people in our position, a lot of us media ones, just you can't discount them because, well, one, they're up near the top, but two, we've seen them do it time and time again. We're going to have to see them do something completely different for us not to think that somehow they're going to get back into this. I'm talking about Linfield. They take care of Carrick at home. They are brilliant against the bottom six sides. The only team that they haven't got all 3 points against was Carrick, and that famous loss at Taylor's Avenue back in August or September time. Game was fairly pedestrian when it comes to big Linfield wins, but in the week that's in it, I feel it should be reflected on this podcast. Last Tuesday, a massive game at the Oval. Glentoran win out, Linfield lose. And unfortunately, the thing that grabbed the headlines was trouble from the Linfield end at the Oval. There was reports of balls being thrown onto the pitch. There was missiles there. You have David Healy saying that on and off the pitch, the club has let themselves down. The IFA says that they are aware of incidents and will work proactively with relevant parties on next steps. There's been a lot of discourse online about specific groups within the Linfield fandom. I think that is up to Linfield to investigate and look into. This is a difficult and unfortunate thing to see, and it is somewhat up to clubs and to a certain extent the IFA to make a decision, because unfortunately this is not the first time we have seen such scenes this season.
It is not, and as you say, it's a real shame, particularly if you think about the product that's on offer at the minute and how good a job Niffle are doing of promoting the league. The title race that we have at the minute, we're getting positive headlines for all the right reasons. It's a real shame whenever something like this happens. I know a lot of the folks down at Linfield have every sympathy for them, in terms of how this is affecting the club in terms of fines and potential stadium bans and stand close downs and stuff like that. There, it's no club should ever really have to go through that. I suppose it's up to those fans to take responsibility, and if they see signs of trouble, it's not for asking fans to do this, but it's true. If they're able to turn around and knock it on the head before it becomes an issue, that makes it a better environment for everybody. But hopefully we're not talking about this again anytime soon, and Linfield gets to the root of the problem.
I think you touched on it there. It's a multifaceted approach. It comes from security in the stand. It comes from other fans to play a role in discouraging this. It's up to the club to take action. It's up to the IFA as well to make sure that when rules are broken, there are sanctions. I'm not saying there will be on this occasion. We haven't seen the results. We've seen David Graham, the Linfield GM, talk about how that banning orders have gone up 300% since the return from COVID. It's not a Linfield problem, he says, but Linfield will do their best to try and solve the problem as best we can. And Linfield have a massive support, and I think it's fair to say that yes, this is Linfield's part of their task is to look into this, and it's up to them to look into this further, because it's definitely not something we want to see. We will wrap up the games that took place over the weekend with a really big result when it comes to the bottom of the league. Dungannon have pulled Newry back. It's 20 points each, and it's all thanks to a 2-0 win away at the Newry Showgrounds. A revenge game, I'm sure, in the eyes of the Swifts after feeling smited earlier on in the season from losing 1-0 down at the Showgrounds due to a disagreement and how a ball should have been or shouldn't have been played back. But they win out. Dungannon took their chances. Newry had a few chances as well. Dunn had to make a save tipping over the bar. You had James Teelan with a snapshot that almost trickled in, but a big win in a big spot for Dungannon. And both of those teams will be battling it out really till the end of the season, and they'll hopefully want Portadown to be done and dusted sooner rather than later in their eyes.
Yeah, well, the only way the Port are going to be done and dusted sooner rather than later is if those sides actually go out and beat them. And I'm sure that rather than looking at Portadown, both managers of Newry and Dungannon are looking at Glenavon and trying to pull them in because like there's a gap of 8 points. Glenavon, yes, have a game in hand over Newry and two over Dungannon, but they'll be chasing Glenavon rather than trying to pull away from, or rather than trying to ensure the Portadown are gone.
Because those two teams are closer to Glenavon than Portadown is
Yep,
to they are.
yep, that's right. So Dungannon play some very good football at times. They've given us good games over the year. Newry, obviously, I think we've only played Newry once so far this season. That's right, because we've played them twice over the next sort of couple of weeks. Newry beat us 5-1 at Moorview early on in the season.
Oh, we remember.
Oh, I remember. So, um, there are two sides who are very capable of going out and picking up results. As we've said throughout this podcast, it's one of those things that's going to make the conclusion of this season particularly interesting. The battle for at the bottom, who will stay or who'll stay up, who'll be in the playoff, will Portadown survive? The final games over the next few weeks are going to be really, really interesting in terms of how that's going to play out.
Newry are on a really difficult run. The last time they won a game on the pitch was back in November when they beat Carrick Rangers 4-1 at home. That was on the 12th of November. They did win against Portadown, the rule book says, or the record book says, but we all know how that played out on the pitch. So they in the league, that is, of course, they haven't really been winning games. So they just need a few more points to try and add to their total and hope that they don't get caught. But they will definitely feel the pressure. But they said, just like we said, Portadown has the opportunity in their hands. So does Newry. They can take care of business as
Yeah.
well in their own right.
The good news for Newry is that they play bottom six failure specialist Glenavon on Saturday. You never know.
That is a weird one, isn't it? Because you could play a massive role in what happens, the fate of your Mid-Ulster rivals, and perhaps a few more in the gate. You'd be winning for a future gate next year if they were able to somehow help Portadown stick around.
Yeah, there's a school of thought around Glenavon that it's better to see Glenavon or Portadown stay up than it is to see them relegated. There's also a school of thought that finds it quite funny whenever Portadown get relegated. I'm not going to reveal in this podcast which camp I'm in, but sure, we'll see what happens at the end of the year. I'm just gonna because if Glenavon finish up being seventh come the split, it could be Glenavon against Portadown on the last game of the season, whatever way it works out. If we finish eighth, and I'm actually away the last weekend of the season, so I may not get to see the last Mid-Ulster Derby for some time.
Like that would be sweet, I imagine, from a Glenavon point of view, because you've had a tough oil few days, and I saw the Portadown fans mock in the stadium there. A dejected set of Glenavon supporters. So I feel like that is going to be replicated tenfold if they go to Glenavon on the final day of the season and it's their final game in the top flight
For the relegation party
for
at Moorview
Sable.
Park, yeah, that'll be good.
Wow,
Um,
that's
but well, I'll actually be in Portugal that weekend, so I'll be having my own wee party. But the act look, it's fascinating. It's going to be really, really exciting. I'm glad that we're part of it in some way, shape, or form. And look, best of luck to all those teams out at the bottom. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how it pans out.
just before we look ahead to this weekend's selection of games. Michael, I started this last week. You don't have to go into too much detail, but I know we probably will. I asked our compadre last week what their view on the big issues on the league are. And for yourself, when I put the questions, summer football and All Ireland League to you, what kind of emotion and thoughts come through you?
I yawn and I go, not again. In my view, I don't think we should move the league to a summer league because you're clashing with holiday time. You're doing away with one of your biggest gates of the year in favor of trying to get people in on a Saturday in the summer, whenever people are more likely to be away doing things. Personally speaking, from our experience, like that, a lot of people who would be involved in coming during the summer, or sorry, during the season, go and play other sports, whether it be bowls, whether it be cricket, whether it be they go and follow the bikes if they're on. So that's going to impact us because believe it or not, football is not some people's first loves. In terms
Mhm.
of an All Ireland League, I don't think it's economically viable. Might be for some of the full time teams, but for the likes of ourselves, Ballymena, Carrick, Portadown, I don't see how it works.
Only because you're only 2 weeks in, but you're the first person to not be a proponent of summer football. When they say to you, but sir, we have to try it, will you not give it a go? How do we know if we don't try it?
Well,
Your response is,
why do we have to try it? Why? What's wrong? What's wrong with the league as it is? We've got the most
nope,
competitive league
that's
in
fair.
history. Full time teams are making strides forward in Europe. Yes, okay, maybe not to the extent that people like, but we're still the teams that are qualifying for Europe are doing reasonably well over the last couple of years. Linfield nearly qualified for the group stages of the Europa Conference League not that long ago. So, we're making progress. And like switching to the summer league is not going to change that.
Attendances are up for most teams. Yep, fair enough. Well, that's what this is for. A little, I'll mark it down what the all opinions are. Some people have asked me to put that in, but we'll get to the games. And as I'm now making a tradition, we'll start with our hosts team. Saturday down at Mourneview Park. Will we see the terror from earlier on in the season repeat itself? What an end of the streak it would be for Newry City. Can you even feel the emotion of believing Glenavon will get back on track on Saturday?
I have to, don't I? If I didn't, I wouldn't leave the house.
Will you do it for Niall and the boys?
I for now, and the boys do it for ourselves. We haven't won a game. Sorry, we haven't won our last eight in the league. If you count the travesty in the Irish Cup, it's no victories in nine. We have to get it right this week. We have to, simply have to. Newry are going to come. They've got the win in their sails, haven't beaten us before. We're down the dumps. It's a tough one to call for me, but I'm hoping and praying for Glenavon win.
It is a tough one as well. I think Newry are clearly struggling to get goals. Perhaps getting out of the showgrounds and going against the team in the bottom six maybe will help them change things up for them. They obviously got a bit of luck last time. I agree with you in the sense that I thought Dungannon were very, very poor at the back. You cannot be as bad at the back as you were on Saturday. Guy will change things up. Usually Glenavon rebound. And I must say, I think Glenavon are so, so dangerous going forward. Jordan Stewart hasn't really kicked into gear yet for Glenavon. Obviously, he's not massively match fit from his season so far. But I will give it to Glenavon. I think this is a get right game, and Glenavon will win out either 2-0 or 2-1.
I hope you're right. I'll go. I'll go Glenavon. I'll go 2-1. We very rarely keep a clean sheet, so we'll go 2-1.
I said how Portadown had to keep their season alive against Glenavon last week. Can Crusaders keep their title beliefs, hope, their whimpers for it alive when they go to Ballymena on Saturday? Ballymena will be coming off a game against Larne, which will be over by the time you're listening to this, so we won't know what happened there. I have saw Ballymena in this calendar year, and I feel like they are struggling to get themselves motivated and back in. They had a bit of spark against Glentoran, but as the season goes on, their season could fade away, could drift away. I think if Crusaders can get in, get an early goal, start bright, they should be able to take the points home back to North Belfast easy enough. But as proven against yourselves at Mourneview Park twice this season, if they let the home team into the game and they're chasing it, they can get caught, and particularly on the break.
Yeah, you basically said exactly what I was going to say there. The away form is a thing. If you look at that, there two games as it is, league positions, you'd say Crusaders win all day long. But the away form for me is just what concerns me about Crusaders. So I'm going to say a draw. I'm going to say a score draw.
Oh, fun. That would be fun. I think this is Crusaders to win. I need to see something for Ballymena, and maybe they'll do it on Tuesday before I start backing them again. Larne, a big week for them. Their game in hand will be against Ballymena. They go to their Antrim rivals, Carrick Rangers. They go to that tight little Taylor's Avenue, Pressure will be on. They will be feeling the pressure because of what happened on Boxing Day when it was a 0-0 draw. Similar Crusaders, you know, Lynch will be setting out his team to go in, get the goals, and kill this game early because Carrick Rangers love a bit of hustle and bustle and the ball being thrown into the box and breaking free from deep. This could be a very entertaining game if Lauren don't
Yeah,
turn the screw and take care of business early days.
yeah. Carrick will put it up the line. There's no doubt about that. They'll make it very difficult for them. If they fail to sort of break them down within that first, even the first hour, I sort of wonder, could Carrick go on and nick it? But of course, as Lauren come out and absolutely battle them early doors, well then game over. But I it'll be tight enough in that game. I think I'll go for a narrow Lauren victory.
I actually think this is a 1-1 draw, you know. I do think that down at Taylor's Avenue, Carrick will be up for it. They had the ingredients, they had the special sauce to get a result against Larne. And at home, I think they could do it again. I know you'll not want to hear this, Larne fans, but this was the blip that I felt. One of the blips that could be coming your way. Or Leroy Miller can smack it in from 25 yards and then it's up to Lee Bonus to finish them off. Big game for Linfield. Coleraine come in looking to wreck their season in many ways. Coleraine are obviously coming off a disappointing defeat to Crusaders. They returned to Belfast in that difficult Windsor Park pitch. Linfield made a load of changes last week after the defeat to Glentoran. I don't know what kind of team David Healy will put back out there. Lafferty had an illness on Saturday. Will he return? Will Shevlin come in to show them the striker they could have had if they just kept Matthew in a pot and watered him and put him in light and kept him nice on the window? This is the game I don't know if I can call because I feel like Coleraine they'll be downtrodden from that defeat against Crusaders, but this feels about time when Linfield put on the sunglasses, jump on the motorbike and say, let's ride to Gibbo, boys.
I've never heard of it or being described like that, but yeah, you could be right. Although
They'll be back.
I actually think Coleraine might be able to steal or get a result here. I think Shevlin's really starting to prove his worth for them, and I don't know why. I think just they have a point to prove. They could be the surprise result of the weekend. And I'm going to go for a 1-0 win for Coleraine.
Oh, tasty. You know what wouldn't be surprising? If it ended up being 0-0. Linfield
Absolutely.
won out last season, similarly around this time, 2-0, but since then it's been 0-0 and 0-0. And of course, it is a preview of the League Cup final coming our way later in March. I'm probably going to have to say that until it's been proven differently, I think that's probably going to be a draw and not one of those fun, entertaining ones either. What could be and should be fascinating entertainment. There's always fireworks when these two teams meet. And boy, do both teams right here need and want the 3 points. Larne will be trying to force a draw. I don't know how you can force a draw, but if there's such thing as a dance for water and rivers and stuff like that and rain, a river dance, then they'll be looking for a draw dance. Cliftonville host Glentoran. This is going to be good, I think.
I think you're right. I'm going to go for a home win in this one. I think Glentoran are due a defeat. So I'm going to go for a Cliftonville win because the home advantage, whenever Cliftonville get going and they're in a game like that at home, they're hard to beat. You know, they're great, classy outfit. We've had some great games with them this season. Glentoran, you just know that somewhere in there, I just think somewhere in there they could slip up again. They had that long run of defeats, they had a long run of victories. So for me, I'm going to go for Cliftonville.
Only a fool would bet against Cliftonville at home. Their record has been sterling over the past year. They haven't lost at home, I think, all season. And they have a run that extends beyond and on and on. Cliftonville got the best of Glentoran, really kicked off the real dreadful run, that Sunday game on Sky Sports when it was Ryan Curran smashed in the goal. Cliftonville are a wounded animal. And really, for both these teams right now, after this game, the wheels will come off for one of them, or potentially both of them for if it's a draw. Either of these teams don't get a win, it will be a massive hindrance, a real rock in the road for them. I think this is going to be a score draw. I think it's going to be 2-2, and it's going to be a red card in there somewhere. And to wrap it all off, a game we talked about a lot, so we'll keep it quick. Dungannon go to Portadown, another big night under the lights at Shamrock Park. Now Curry will hope that his revolution continues here after that big win against Glenavon. Can you see it happening? Because I don't think I can. I think Dungannon are going to hold tight, and they could punish Portadown on the break here, because Portadown will need to go for this.
They will. I think Portadown will get a result here.
Because a draw really isn't good enough for them at this situation.
No, they have to win. They have to win. I suppose at the end of the day, Portadown are playing for a bit of freedom because there's no expectations on them. People have them condemned already. They can go into this game. Dungannon will be favourites due to the position they're in. And that's the sort of game that Niall Curry gets his teams to play very well in. Never the underdogs, as we saw the other day. So I am going to go for a Portadown win.
Wow, you're kind. You've given something to them after a week where they took so much, sadly, away. I think Portadown have a dreadful record against Dungannon Swifts over the past while. It would be a big upturn. They've faced against them 4 times this season, and they have lost all of them and drawn 1. So we'll have to see what goes down. Michael, an absolute delight to have you on. I absolutely promise the next time I have you on, it will be a big, massive Glenavon celebration. We're going to have a party. We're going to have Lurgan Spadetown beer. We're going to have a Lurgan delicacy, like, I don't know, a super chip or something.
Buckfast.
Yes, of course. We're going to have a big old party when it all comes together. You did have the chance. You could have been coming here and you could have been dancing on Portadown's hopes of staying alive, but unfortunately it wasn't be the case. I really enjoy all the stuff you do online. Like I said, the interview via Mornview Monthly with your chairman Adrian Tier is the best thing I've seen from not only actually club media, but one of my favourite bits of journalism in the league this year. I thought it was fantastic. I told you that. That's why I had to get you on really quickly. I love the podcast you do there. Your interviews are always great with Gary, and I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff from yourself throughout the year. Albeit you're going to end it in the lovely rays of Portugal. Where can people see and find stuff that is either produced or talked or tweeted by yourself?
Well, we obviously have all our Glenavon accounts, at Glenavon_FC on Twitter, and obviously the Facebook and YouTube channels. And then I work as well. I run the Your Lurgan website, which is yourlurgan.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I think that's them all. LinkedIn as well, for some reason we're on there too, so you'll find me anywhere you want, basically.
Fancy man pros. I'm not a LinkedIn man, sadly. I
very rarely use it.
Yes, well, at least you can say it. You're going to tell me that you've got lots of Gary Hamilton TikToks for us all to hook out? No,
don't think Gary likes TikTok, so we leave out the other managers in the league to sort out.
Fantastic, Michael, I'm looking forward to chatting to you soon.
Adieu, thanks.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? I genuinely near said to Michael on the day of recording, you know what, this just feels a bit cruel. I know sometimes that guest team will lose. That's pretty much the way it will and can go, but that I'm sure was not a fun one. But it was a fun one, I'm sure, for you and I, because Glenavon are a team that we haven't really gone to the nitty gritty. When you have a team like that that's going up and then down, they haven't really had a chance to scratch beneath the surface and go, what is actually going on there? What's happening? What do the fans think? And I thought it was a really interesting conversation. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for them. Like I said at the start of the podcast, if you need more fix, need more chat with me, you can either go check out previous episodes, which of course includes a little bonus one I did at the start of the week, chatting to Kieran Burke from the Between the Stripes League of Ireland podcast. That was a cracker, a bit of a shorter, snappier, but a really fun conversation there. You can listen to all the other episodes. You hear me talking about the whole cutting of cloth thing. I did a big special about that called cloth cutting, I think. Yeah, loads of stuff on there. If you want to check out another episode, you can do that by going on to social media, going at Kicking Match on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. You can say to your smart speaker to play the episodes. Just go, hey smart speaker, whatever they're called, please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. Less dithering, more podcasting. I will see you soon. Chat soon. Goodbye. I'll see you later. See you next time. Bye bye.